primary threats to turkeys in Missouri can be solved by restoring their proper nesting and brooding habitats. But how?
That's a great spot for quail. The turkeys get in there in the shade because it's really...
Several years ago, Greg Dix, landowner, wanted more birds on his property.
We have to be conscious about what we want. If we want turkeys, we got to be conscious. We got to do some active management.
So Dix got some help.
I visited with a private lands biologist from Missouri Department of Conservation when I first bought the farm in 2007. And I told him what I wanted to do. I wanted to maximize quail, turkey as a byproduct deer, but mainly focus on the birds. And he said, not a problem if you're willing to do the hard work.
We always laugh and say that we are a cattle farm with an emphasis on wildlife.
Adam Keith, along with his brother a few years ago, purchased additional acreage to add to their historic family farm in Ava, Missouri.
So we have cattle, but we do a lot more work around the cattle pastures, restoring habitat to try to kind of ultimately have our cattle fit into the whole system, not just be maximized cattle and kind of push the wildlife to the side.
Keith was trying to return the property to its pre-European settlement condition, and it paid off.
A lot of this is woodland, so we're not quite open prairie, not quite open savanna, but also not closed canopy forest. And we said, okay, this has a lot of herbaceous plants, a lot of flowering plants in the understory. Still has oak hickory component, but it's not just only oak hickory. In that process, it was like, okay, we need to just thin out the forest, which was great for us because that gave us a chance to log and make some money, which helped put back into the farm or back into the payment of the farm. In the meantime, we got great habitat for deer, turkey, quail, and also made money.
Dix and Keith started by utilizing 3 tools of habitat restoration: thinning, burning, and rotating.
We need to create a mosaic of brood and nesting cover on this farm. And how are we going to do that? Start in the forest, open up the canopy. We think that logging and cutting trees is a bad thing, and actually, if it's done correct, it's actually the healthiest thing we can do for our forests or for our woodlands, is to continue that cycle of cutting mature trees, allowing new trees to grow, getting the ample amount of sunlight to the forest floor, and it just creates an ecosystem that is hard to ignore.
When you create those canopy gaps, you're going to get a flush of grasses and forbs. That's the first step in succession. And the reason that's important for turkeys, every baby bird eats insects, and the more insects you have, the higher your survival rate is. A turkey poult, if it's getting access to enough insects where it's basically sated, it's flying in 9 days. If it's got a scrap for groceries, it's going to grow slower. And we've got, some telemetry birds, it's taken them 2 weeks or longer to get into a tree. The quicker you fly, the fewer that die.
The turkeys need a certain environment, certain structure, a certain plant species, and to get that, you don't just go plant something. What you do is you use a process that Mother Nature came up with millions of years ago, and that's burning.
Fire is an important aspect of most land management. I think it's one of the easiest tools we can utilize. Historically, fire has been here for as long as we have been here, but much longer than that. Fires historically started by lightning strikes. Our native tribes that called Missouri home, they started fires. They knew the benefit of starting fires. But fires help set back our habitat to what we call early successional vegetation. And that's what we see behind me. That's what historically most of Missouri was.
This was a landscape shaped by fire. And so people got scared of fire, so they stopped doing it. And this historic woodland just declined pretty quickly.
If you're not burning, you're not effectively managing for turkeys. You pretty much have to have that as a component, whether it's in open land or in the timber.
Restoring turkey habitat is a multi-year rotational process. In year 1, thin the woodland to allow sunlight to reach the forest bottom and to allow room for trees to grow. In year 2, burn the woodland floor to remove dense undergrowth, invasive species, and to allow turkey-friendly forbs to grow. Burn the edge area at this time as well. Then, in year 3, burn the open fields to control cool season grasses and other invasive species, and to stimulate native plant growth. In year 4, let the habitat flourish. Follow up in year 5 by starting a cycle of burning, beginning with the woodland. In year 6, burn the open fields, and so on, thinning woodlands only when needed.
Start burning, kind of creating a rotation of burning to where years we didn't burn, we had nesting cover. Years we did burn, those areas were brood rearing cover, and just creating that checkerboard effect that turkeys can really thrive on.
I started with a chainsaw and a backpack sprayer, and that's all I had to manage it. But as I've gotten older and I've gotten more equipment, I'm able to do a lot more, a lot quicker. But it can be done very simply with just some hand tools even.
Fire is certainly something that you should have respect for, but it's one of our best tools in our tool bag for managing a landscape or an ecosystem, especially a fire-dependent ecosystem like this woodland. There's no other project or management tool that we can manage that many acres in a single day. We can burn 200 acres in 3 different burn units in one day. We can't run a chainsaw across that in a week. We can't run a tractor across that in a couple of days and provide the amount of benefit that we do with a prescribed fire. It's something that with all the resources that MDC is putting out, that we can go and learn, we can go and get certification, limit our liability, get some friends involved. It's a great opportunity to get together and have some fun, restore a landscape.
And that's what these turkeys need, especially for nesting and brood rearing habitat. They need this early successional vegetation, and they need a good fire rotation. They need that nesting and brood rearing side by side, basically. Nesting is great for 1 year, and then brood rearing the next.
You can create and manage good turkey habitat by using the tools: thinning, burning, and rotating. So, how do you get started? Our next video will answer that.